My rich parents forced me to marry a poor girl to teach me a lesson about being entitled. But what they discovered about her 3 years later destroyed the family legacy they'd spent decades building. My name is Marcus Donovan. I'm 31 years old now, and this is the story of how my parents engineered my marriage to humble me, how they underestimated the woman they forced me to wed, and how the truth that emerged ended their control over everything. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, Beacon Hill, old money. My parents, Richard and Catherine Donovan, came from generations of wealth. Banking family, trust funds, inherited fortunes. I'd grown up entitled. I knew it. Everyone knew it. At 25, I'd been arrogant, spoiled, dated exclusively women from wealthy families, drove a Porsche my parents bought me, worked a cushy job at the family bank that I didn't really deserve. My parents had been concerned I'd never learn the value of real work, real struggle, real life. In 2018, they'd sat me down for a conversation that would change everything. "Marcus, your mother and I are worried about you," my dad had begun. "Worried about what?" I'd asked, barely paying attention. "You're 25. You've never struggled for anything, never worked for anything you have. You think money solves everything," my mom had explained. "Money does solve everything," I'd replied arrogantly. "That attitude is exactly the problem," my dad had stated firmly. "What do you want me to do? Pretend to be poor?" I'd challenged. "No, we want you to understand what most people's lives are actually like, what it means to work hard, to struggle, to build something from nothing," my mom had said. "How am I supposed to learn that?" I'd asked. "By marrying someone who understands it, someone who's lived it, someone from a working-class background," my dad had revealed. I'd laughed. "You want me to marry a poor person? As punishment?" "Not as punishment, as education. We've arranged something," my mom had said. "Arranged? What did you arrange?" I'd demanded. "We've identified a suitable young woman, Emma Morrison. She's 23, works as a nurse at Mass General, comes from a modest background, Watertown family, working class, good values, good character," my dad had explained. "You picked out a wife for me? Like this is the 1800s?" I'd said incredulously. "We're giving you a choice. Marry Emma. Live on your combined salaries. No trust fund, no family money, for 3 years. Learn what real life is like. Or we cut you off completely. No inheritance, no job at the bank, nothing," my mom had outlined. "You're blackmailing me into marriage?" I'd challenged. "We're teaching you a lesson, one you desperately need," my dad had stated. "And if I refuse?" I'd pressed. "Then you're on your own. Immediately. No family support, no money, no connections. See how far your entitlement gets you," my mom had said coldly. I'd been furious, but I'd also been practical. I'd known I couldn't survive without family money. I'd never actually worked a real job, never paid my own bills, never struggled for anything. So I'd agreed, reluctantly. They'd introduced me to Emma a week later, coffee shop in Cambridge. She'd been pretty, quiet, clearly uncomfortable. "Emma, this is Marcus. Marcus, Emma," my mom had made introductions. "Hi," I'd said, barely looking at her. "Hello," Emma had replied softly. My parents had explained the arrangement to her. They'd offered her family $100,000 to agree to the marriage. Money her parents desperately needed. Her dad was sick, medical bills piling up. Emma had agreed, not because she wanted to, because her family needed the money. We'd gotten married 2 weeks later. City Hall, small ceremony, no celebration. The rules were clear. We'd lived together for 3 years on our salaries alone. I'd gotten a job at a mid-level marketing firm, arranged by family connections but with a legitimate salary, $65,000 a year. Emma made $58,000 as a nurse. Combined, $123,000. Comfortable by most standards, but nothing like what I'd been used to. We'd moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in Somerville. $2,400 a month rent. Normal furniture. No luxury. For me, it had been hell. For Emma, it had been normal. The first year had been awful. I'd resented her, resented my parents, resented my situation. Emma had been patient, kind. She'd worked long shifts at the hospital, came home exhausted, cooked dinner, tried to make conversation. I'd been cold, distant, treated the marriage like the prison sentence I thought it was. "How was work?" Emma would ask. "Fine," I'd reply, not looking up from my phone. "I made pasta. Are you hungry?" she'd offer. "I'll order something," I'd dismiss. She'd never complained, never pushed, just quietly existed in the space I refused to share. Slowly, things had started to change. I'd begun noticing things about her, how hard she worked, how she'd pick up extra shifts to help her parents with bills, how she'd spend her day off volunteering at a clinic in Dorchester. She'd never asked me for anything, never expected anything. One night, about 18 months into the marriage, I'd come home from a particularly bad day at work. My boss had yelled at me for a mistake. I'd felt humiliated. Emma had been in the kitchen. She'd looked at my face. "Rough day?" she'd asked gently. For the first time, I'd actually talked to her, told her what happened. She'd listened, really listened, then said something that stuck with me. "You know what I learned working in the ER? Everyone struggles. Rich patients, poor patients, everyone's dealing with something. Money doesn't protect you from being human," Emma had observed. It had been the first real conversation we'd ever had. After that, I'd started actually seeing her, not as the punishment my parents had inflicted, but as a person. We'd started talking more, having dinner together, watching movies. I'd learned about her life, her childhood in Watertown, her dad's construction business that had failed when he got sick, her mom working 2 jobs to support the family. She'd learned about me, my entitlement, my privilege, my slowly growing realization that I'd been an asshole. By year 2, something unexpected had happened. I'd fallen in love with her. Real love. Not the superficial relationships I'd had before, but actual, deep connection. Emma had been hesitant at first. "Marcus, you don't have to do this. I know this marriage wasn't your choice." It wasn't, but I'm choosing to stay now, not because of my parents' ultimatum, because I want to, I'd told her honestly. We'd built a real marriage, a real partnership. Year 3 arrived. Our contract was almost up. According to the arrangement, after 3 years, I'd get access to my trust fund again. We'd have fulfilled the terms. My parents had invited us to dinner, at their Beacon Hill mansion, first time in 3 years. Emma had been nervous. "They're going to judge me, judge us." "Let them. I don't care anymore," I'd assured her. We'd arrived. My parents had greeted us formally. "Marcus, Emma, please, sit." My dad had gestured to the formal dining room. We'd sat through an uncomfortable dinner. My parents had asked surface-level questions about our life, our jobs, our apartment. Then my dad had gotten to the point. "Marcus, it's been 3 years. You've fulfilled the terms of our arrangement. We're prepared to restore your trust fund, give you your position back at the family bank," my dad had announced. "And what about Emma?" I'd asked. "Emma fulfilled her part of the agreement. Her family received their payment. The marriage can be dissolved if you choose. No harm, no foul," my mom had said casually. "Dissolved?" I'd repeated. "We assumed this was a temporary arrangement, a learning experience. You're free to move on with your life now. Find someone more suitable," my dad had suggested. I'd looked at Emma. She'd been staring at her plate, silent. "Emma is suitable. She's my wife, and I'm not dissolving anything," I'd stated firmly. "Marcus, be realistic. Emma served her purpose. She taught you humility. But you can't seriously intend to stay married to a nurse from Watertown," my mom had started. "I absolutely intend to stay married to her, because I love her, because she's the best person I've ever known, because she's shown me what actual value looks like," I'd interrupted. My parents had exchanged glances. "You're making a mistake," my dad had said. "No, the mistake was mine, 3 years ago, when I was the entitled asshole you were trying to fix. Emma didn't fix me. She showed me who I could be if I actually tried. And I'm not giving that up for money or status or family approval," I'd declared. Emma had reached for my hand under the table, squeezed it. If you choose her, you're choosing to stay at your current life level. No trust fund, no position at the bank. You'll be middle class. Forever, my mom had warned. Good. I like who I am now better than who I was, I'd replied. We'd left that night. My parents had been furious. But here's where the story took a turn my parents never expected. 6 months later, I'd gotten a call from a lawyer. Not my family's lawyer, a different one. Mr. Donovan? Marcus Donovan? The voice had asked. Yes, I'd confirmed. My name is James Patterson. I represent the estate of Harrison Morrison. I believe he was your father-in-law, the lawyer had explained. Emma's dad had passed away 2 months earlier. We'd known his health was failing. Yes, what's this about? I'd asked. I need to meet with you and Emma regarding Mr. Morrison's estate. Can you come to my office this week? Patterson had requested. We'd met him 3 days later, in a small office in downtown Boston. Thank you for coming. I'll get straight to the point. Harrison Morrison left a will, and there are some surprising provisions, Patterson had begun. My dad had nothing to leave. We barely covered his medical bills, Emma had said quietly. That's what I thought too. But it turns out Mr. Morrison had assets he never disclosed. He owned property. Quite a bit of it, actually, Patterson had revealed. Property? I'd questioned. In the 1990s, Mr. Morrison bought several commercial properties in Watertown and Cambridge. Run-down buildings. He renovated them slowly over the years, rented them out. Never told anyone. Not even his wife, Patterson had explained. I don't understand. My dad was a construction worker. He didn't have money for property investments, Emma had protested. He saved every penny for 20 years. Bought his first property in 1994 for $80,000. Fixed it himself. Rented it. Used that income to buy another. Then another. He was extremely private about it. Apparently, he didn't want people treating him differently, Patterson had shared. How much property? I'd asked. Patterson had slid papers across the desk. 12 commercial buildings, currently valued at approximately $18.7 million. Emma had gone white. That's not possible. It's very possible, and it's all left to you, Emma, along with his business accounts, investment portfolios, and cash assets. Total estate value? $23.4 million, Patterson had revealed. I'd stared at the papers. Emma had started crying. My dad was a millionaire? And he never told us? We struggled. We worried about bills. Emma had trailed off. He wanted you to build your own life, not rely on his money. It's all explained in his letter, Patterson had said, handing her an envelope. Emma had read it silently, tears streaming down her face. The letter had explained everything. How her dad had wanted her to understand hard work, to appreciate what she earned, to marry someone who valued her, not her money. He'd known about my parents' arrangement, known they'd paid Emma's family, and he'd used that $100,000 to buy another property. Never touched it for medical bills. He'd been testing both of us, testing if we'd make the marriage real. Emma had inherited everything. My wife, the poor girl my parents had forced me to marry to teach me humility, was worth more than my entire family fortune. When word had gotten out, my parents had been humiliated. The woman they'd dismissed as just a nurse from Watertown was wealthier than them. They'd tried to reconnect, tried to apologize, tried to get back in our lives. Emma had been gracious. You taught Marcus an important lesson. Thank you for that. But we don't need your approval or your money anymore. We'd used Emma's inheritance to start a foundation, helping working-class families with medical debt, funding nursing scholarships, supporting small businesses in Watertown. My parents had been furious that we'd wasted the money on charity instead of joining their social circle. But Emma and I had never been happier. Here's what I learned. Money reveals character. It doesn't create it. My parents thought poverty would humble me and wealth would validate them. But Emma had character regardless of money, and my parents lacked it regardless of fortune. I also learned that the people you dismiss might be the ones with the most to teach you. My parents looked down on Emma, but she taught me more about value, hard work, and integrity than they ever did. Most importantly, love built on genuine connection outlasts love built on convenience. My parents forced us together, but we chose to stay. That choice, made freely, meant everything. Some people measure worth in dollars. Others measure it in character. Know which measurement actually matters before you judge anyone's value. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and tell me which country you're watching from. I love hearing from all of you. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss these powerful stories about assumptions, class, character, and understanding that the richest person isn't the one with the most money. It's the one with the most integrity. New story every single day that will make you think, feel, and connect. See you in the next one. Take care.